Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Hello and greetings, everybody. My name is Ben Bowler from Unity Earth, and I'm delighted to be here as part of the Earthstock Summit with this very important conversation and convening around spiritual unity in a divided world. And I'm particularly excited to be doing this as part of this whole week of events as Earthstock Summit. And what I think and consider to be perhaps the most important conversation on the planet at this time, which is how can we achieve a greater spiritual unity, harmony, fraternity with the human family as well as with all of life at a time of tremendous challenge and division. It's particularly poignant because Unity Earth itself has come out of the interfaith movement. And so this panel of interfaith and including Indigenous elders coming together to have this conversation is a very resonant one. And when we go back and look at the history of the interfaith movement, it went through some very important stages. And initially, what began as simply dialogue, listening to and sharing with people of other faiths was a very important step on that journey, but perhaps happening more in an academic context or an intellectual context through various conferences and academic works and books and publications. But from there, it's evolved into further stages of development, into more experiential sharing across the traditions. So not just an intellectual listening to and sharing of beliefs and ideologies and traditions, but then a sharing of spiritual practices. And somewhere along the line, it went from an intellectual endeavor into much more of a shared experience. And in that is born the seeds of what becomes a spiritual unity, a greater spiritual unity. We have been using the term interspiritual these many years, a term coined by the great brother Wayne Teasdale. And we have here also today as a special guest, Dr. Kurt Johnson, who'll be sharing a little bit later about this is the evolution of what began as interfaith dialogue has gone through that journey of evolution into more of an experience across the tradition, sharing practices together. You know, when Catholic priests start practicing Buddhist meditation or doing Hindu chanting, or when Islamic practitioners study the life of St. Francis and the experiential of the prayer life of St. Francis. This is a deepening into what has been coined and termed interspiritual. And I think in the context of this conversation is how can we foster a greater spiritual unity on the planet, bringing together indigenous wisdom, going back tens of thousands of years of living history, all the way through to the revealed religions, up to the more recent revelations, be they the Baha'i or the Sikh, or even the modern day spiritual cultures and the consciousness movement. How can we foster places and spaces and cultures which are a home to all of these, and a place where all of these traditions and lineages can find a belonging together? And I think that is the opportunity and the challenge that we're going to be exploring today. Our first speaker, I'm going to play a message from Rabbi David Rosen, who is an eminent faith-based leader in this space and a wonderful friend of Unity Earth. Rabbi David Rosen has taken leave from his position as the American Jewish Committee's International Director of Interreligious Affairs in order to serve as special advisor to the Abrahamic Family House in Abu Dhabi. And we've been there as part of our journey to the UAE with COP28 and the Dubai Convergence. We visited the Abrahamic Family House. It's extraordinary. It's a mosque, a church, and a synagogue all in one compound, beautiful, beautiful place with a wonderful intention. And it's great that David Rosen has taken up such a special role there. David Rosen has been advancing understanding and good relations between religious communities for more than 40 years, from the time he served as rabbi of the largest Orthodox Jewish congregation in South Africa, and during his tenure as chief rabbi of Ireland, and through the last more than 30 years based in Jerusalem. So certainly a world leader in this space, and delighted to bring David, who's in Jerusalem, where it's the middle of the night right now, So we've got a video from David, which we'll bring up right now to open our panel today.
Most of us will be familiar with John Lennon's wonderful song Imagine, expressing the hope for the well-being of humanity at large. In the second stanza, the words go, "Imagine there are no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too." While undoubtedly Lennon's aspirations, his motivations, were the most noble, there is a fundamental fallacy in these words. The fallacy is the idea that we achieve the well-being of humanity through reducing us all to our lowest common denominator, through eliminating our identities. But our identities are the building blocks of our psychological and spiritual well-being, being part of families, being part of communities, being part of peoples, countries. The challenge, of course, is how to avoid these components of identity being used not just in an exclusive manner, but in a manner that actually harms our relations with others. We see that something as noble as the idea of family can be abused, such as in the expression of the mafia, where family becomes an end in itself, regardless of any moral value. We see it in the conflicts between peoples and nations, where the interests of one group are not only advanced at the expense of the other, but very often the other is even demonized in the process. So there is no question that these components of identity can be abused. But the solution isn't to try to eliminate them, which won't work anyway, and causes all kinds of psychological and spiritual problems for people. The challenge is how to ensure that these are used in a constructive manner. And the constructive manner means being able to recognize that while we have differences, and these differences are part of the glory of creation, the beauty of diversity, nevertheless, there are things that unite us and things that even transcend our differences, not least of all our very humanity. And this sense of connectedness of all human beings, each and every one created in the image of God, this sense that we are part and parcel of a cosmos, each of us in one way or another connected to far more than simply our own community and even more than humanity, is the critical component in ensuring that the components of human identity are not abused. So such events as this, bringing people together across borders and differences and cultures and religious traditions, is critical to ensuring that those particularities are a blessed contribution to the well-being of humanity, that highlight the sense of the divine in each and every one of us, in our different traditions, and indeed in the natural world and the world as a whole. I think this unity in diversity is precisely the spirit of Unity Earth, the spirit that it seeks to advance. And it should be, and I hope is, the expression of this wonderful gathering, to which I send every blessing and every good wish.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi David Rosen, for very interesting remarks. I know it's going to perhaps cause some controversy with the John Lennon fans out there. And I know that Imagine is a beloved song, but I think it's an interesting thing to explore. What David's saying is, how can we show up in our identities? Not by removing all identities, but how can we achieve unity and still affirm the variety of identities which are a necessary part of our human experience. Our next speaker, an eminent and extraordinary woman, Audrey Kitagawa, is a president and founder of the International Academy for Multicultural Cooperation, president of the Light of Awareness International Spiritual Family, chair of the Anti-Racism Initiative, chair of the Gender Equality Working Group, and a member of the Advisory Council of the G20 Interfaith Forum. Audrey is a former advisor to the Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict at the United Nations. There's more to Audrey's bio, but let me just bring her up for now. Audrey, great to have you with us. Audrey is a UN representative for the United Religions Initiative, a trustee for the International Center for Religion and Diplomacy, and a member of the Advisory Council for the Global Security Institute. Audrey's been listed in Who's Who in American Law, Who's Who of American Women, Who's Who in America, Who's Who in the World, and Prominent People of Hawaii. Audrey, you are an absolute wonder and such a blessing. The work that you do and the light that you bring. We're honored to have you here with us, and welcome. We're looking forward to hearing your reflections.
Well, hello, everyone from New York City, and my deepest appreciation to Ben Bowler and Unity Earth for this invitation to share with you tonight on how to achieve spiritual unity in a divided world. These are perennial questions and have been studied through the eons and contemplated upon by the greatest philosophers, global thinkers, religious leaders, and every person who has concerns about the status of the world that we perceive. Rabbi David Rosen's insightful introduction speaks to the interconnectivity of life and the beauty of diversity, which has the power to unite and transcend our differences. And our individual cultural, religious, and social identity should not divide us, but should be celebrated and recognized as brilliant facets and manifestations of the divine life that exists in all of life. When we take on individual form and structure, such as a physical body, we come into individuation and individual identity. The perspectives that we have are based upon our own enculturation and the limitations of the five senses and the five elements. Our sacred journey is to learn the ways of transcendence that will take us to the ultimate reality of our true selves, which arises from the divine creator who is a one power in the universe that created us all and at all times exists in us as a one great unifying power that is pure, unconditional, divine love. The perception that there is separation that exists comes from our identification with our individual identity, such as this is me, I am my body, my mind, my possessions, and so on. This creates distinction and hierarchies of perceived power, money, power, and name and fame being two of the most sought after and prized externalized evidence of success by those who seek the substantiation of their identity in the external world of creation. However, this is the least stable and secure manner in which we can move through life because the world of creation is always changing. One can never find stability by placing your identity in an external world that is constantly changing. One day you have peace, another day you have war. One day you have war, and the next day you have peace. One day you are wealthy, and the next day you're a pauper. One day you have good health, and the next day poor health. And so the up and down cycles of life in the pairs of opposites continue its endless play. We spend our whole lives trying to hold on to the ever-changing external world as if it were permanent. However, the great mystics and enlightened spiritual masters have long shared that ignorance about our true nature causes us suffering. Lord Buddha said our attachments cause us to suffer because we want to hold on to external things as if we can have them forever. At the same time, we know that when we're born, we come into the world naked, and we all have to depart our bodies one day, and when we do, we will leave behind our bank accounts, houses, or anything material. My beautiful spiritual mother transmitted to me these powerful, precious, sacred transmissions. She said, the mind is not real, only God is real. The body is not real, only God is real. Anything that changes is not real. Only God is real. Everything in creation changes. Only God, the changeless changer, is real. She also said, our true purpose in life is God realization. Contemplating upon these sacred transmissions requires that we spend time in the silence so we can be still and grow in insight and awareness and dive deep into who we truly are as spiritual beings clothed in human form. When we realize that our true self is the one and the same self that exists in all people and sentient beings. There is no separation, and we are the one and the same being. The great sage Sri Ramana Maharshi said, "Your own self realization is the greatest service you can render to the world. The only purpose of the present birth is to turn within and realize the self." However, we recognize that one's interest in finding the true self that is already within you, the closest of all, may not be a priority as we search for ways to feed, house, and clothe the body and fulfill our desires. It is also difficult when the whole culture is based upon defining success by what one owns, what kind of fancy cars we drive, and so on. At the same time, we are becoming more conscious of the fact that the world is filled with conflict, the devolution of civility, respect, and the loss of human dignity, and the ever-growing divide between the super-rich and the desperately poor, with the increasing loss of the moderating balance of the middle class. With news reaching us almost instantly about the strife and conflict going on anywhere in the world, we can identify with those who are suffering with the loss of their homes, their loved ones, and not having enough food to eat. All of these challenges can discourage us and make us feel hopeless. On the other hand, these challenges can be a call to help us contribute to alleviate the suffering of others. But just as they tell you in the airplane that is having an emergency to put on your oxygen mask first before you try to help another person, so too our duty is to take up our personal responsibility to develop our inner lives and to build our own character and develop a proper moral and ethical compass. This is our lifelong work to continuously help us to become better people. The great spiritual masters have given all their followers codes of conduct to live by. There is a need to find time for prayer and spiritual discipline right now amidst our worldly duties. Sri Ramakrishna said, "Do your duty with one hand and with other hold to God. After the duty is over, you will hold to God with both hands." Prayer and meditation at fixed hours in the morning and evening is a good way of holding to God with one hand. Sri Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita also underlines this point. At all times, constantly remember me. It is in that remembrance of the divine presence that is ever with us that we can find true peace, in knowing that in reality we are one with no separation and already exist in unity where no divisions exist. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you greatly. Thank you greatly, Miss Audrey Kitagawa, for those beautiful and sage reflections. Your light blesses us all greatly, and we're deeply grateful for those reflections, and we look forward to hearing a little more from you as we get into the discussion part as well. But beautiful offering there. Our next message is from Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati. And Sadhviji is currently traveling. She's in the airport going through Montreal. So she might try and join us, but she has sent in a message by video, which was recorded. Many of you might be aware of Sister Jenna. This was recorded last night in Sister Jenna's studio up on the East Coast. So Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati is a renowned spiritual leader, author, and motivational speaker based in Rishikesh, India. She is the author of the #1 best-selling memoir, Hollywood to the Himalayas, A Journey of Healing and Transformation. She's the International Director of Paramath Niketan, Rishikesh, Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance, an international interfaith organization dedicated to clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. President of Divine Shakti Foundation, a foundation that runs free schools, vocational training programs, and empowerment programs, and director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival at Paramath Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh. Sadhviji, like all of our speakers today, has a very long and extensive bio, but I will go now to her beautiful message that she shared on spiritual unity in a divided world. And over to Sadhvi.
It's such a blessing and a joy to be with you all today at this Earthstock Summit. It's really time that we stop and take stock. What is the situation of our earth? What is the situation of those of us who are inhabiting the earth? Let us take stock of our responsibilities. We focus so much on our rights, our human rights, and we focus far too little on our human responsibilities. But as we have rights, so we have responsibilities. And those responsibilities include caring, protecting, preserving all of life. But as we are getting more and more divided and more of our energy is being spent fighting each other, whether it's on the basis of race or religion or color or country or political party or sexual orientation or how you think COVID started or what are your views about what's happening in this part of the world or that part of the world. It seems like we're just looking for more and more excuses to contract into camps, to create these walls and borders and boundaries of us versus them. Psychologically speaking, we know that fear is what makes us contract. When we're afraid, we go like this physically, but also emotionally. And so with fear being the driver of that contraction, our faith is that which we need to fall back into as that to help us expand. Because the fear in our hearts that's causing us to contract is going to kill not only our planet, but it's going to kill our own hearts and our own spiritual practices in our own lives long before it kills Mother Earth. So we're harming our planet, we're harming each other. And for those of us who are purely selfishly motivated, we're actually harming ourselves. One of my very favorite jokes is the joke of the man who goes to the doctor. And he says to the doctor, "Doctor, there is something very wrong with me. Whatever I touch, it hurts. When I touch my head, it hurts. When I touch my back, it hurts. I touch my stomach, it hurts." And so the doctor does every test, every scan. And he calls the guy back in and he says, "Well, the good news is there's nothing wrong with your head or your back or your stomach. But the bad news is your finger's broken. And since your finger's broken, naturally, whatever you touch, it hurts. But it hurts not because the problem is in the head or the back or the stomach or the knee. The problem is in the broken connection of the bone and the finger. And due to that, it seems like your whole body hurts." And this is what's happening in our lives today. Our world in so many ways is hurting. And whether it's hurting because of wars and violence, or it's hurting because of environmental destruction, it's hurting because of deforestation, it's hurting because of our conflict with each other, or whether it's hurting on the level of depression, loneliness, mental health issues, anxiety, addictions. We're hurting so much in so many ways. And the root cause of that hurt is the same, going back to the guy with the broken finger. The root cause is our broken internal connection. A connection with the divine, who is beyond borders, beyond boundaries, beyond individual forms, infinite by nature. And in that infiniteness, therefore, encompasses all, includes all. And as we disconnect ourselves from each other, as we disconnect ourselves from the sacredness, the sacred humanity in each other, and as we disconnect ourselves from Mother Earth, from the sacredness of Mother Earth, she suffers, we suffer. The earth is not a resource We speak about natural resources. Look at our vocabulary. She's not a resource. Water resources, land resources. No. Water is sacred. Our land is sacred. Our trees are sacred. On that same level, so are our humans, right? I mean, we say human resources. Well, our humans are also not resources. But as long as we are seeing our planet and each other from the perspective of a resource, like, what can you give me? You say something has a lot of natural resources, it means I'm going to get a lot out of it. Whether it's water, whether it's fertile soil, whether maybe it's gold in the land, whether it's oil. The earth and each other are not resources for us to use and abuse and discard. In the Vedic tradition, we say, our scriptures teach us, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And it means the world is a family. But even more specifically, it means the world is the family of Vasudha. Vasudha is the goddess of the earth. We are the family of Mother Earth. As she suffers, so we suffer. Quantum physics today is discovering that which our spiritual scriptures have told us for thousands of years. We are connected. They call it string theory. They call it quantum entanglement. The scriptures just call it connection, oneness, unity. But it doesn't matter whether you go into this from the spiritual side or from the scientific side. Either way, what I do over here is impacting over there. And it's impacting here as well. It's not only impacting there. We are connected. And so today, as we come together to take stock in our earth, let us reconnect. Let us stop harming ourselves and each other, because, you know, if you look at a human body, an infection in any part of the body is going to bring the whole thing down. You could think, oh, well, it's just my finger. But if you let the infection in the finger go long enough, gets septic, kills the whole thing. It's like that beautiful story of the three men in the boat, where they divide the boat into the three separate compartments, and a leak springs in one man's part of the boat. And the other two panic and say, stop up the leak. We're all going to drown. Right? And he says, oh, don't worry, it's only leaking in my part of the boat. Well, whether we use the boat as our analogy or we use the human body as the analogy, a leak, an infection in any part of the boat, in any part of the body, in any part of the collective is ultimately bringing us all down. Where trees are being felled, where rivers are being polluted, where the air is being polluted, where our indigenous sisters and brothers are losing their land. We're all suffering. Just because we don't acknowledge it or experience it doesn't mean it's not happening. And the future is really suffering. So let us today, we take stock of where we've gone wrong, but then we realize that we can also take stock of the great strength that we have in unity, because that unity is a strength. And let us come together, joining our hands, joining our hearts together as we remember our union and work together for the planet. I'll just close with a beautiful Vedic mantra that says, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, Sarve santu niramaya, Sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhaved. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings attain their highest state of potential. May no being suffer. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om peace. peace, peace.
Beautiful, a beautiful message from Sadhvi Saraswati. And Sadhvi has joined us live from Montreal Airport, and maybe just for a few moments, Sadhvi, thank you so much for that beautiful message following amazing a message from Miss Audrey Kitagawa, and before that, Rabbi David Rosen. But great to have you here with us live in the room. How are you doing? You're on the move from one continent to the next. How are you, Sadhvi? Great to have you with us.
I'm so happy to be with you. And yes, I'm in the Montreal airport at the moment on the final leg of getting back home to India. I flew from Brasilia to Sao Paulo to Washington, DC to Montreal. And now I'm just about to go for boarding for my flight back home to Delhi. So I'm so grateful to our beloved sister Jenna and her team for helping me get a beautiful pre-record done in her beautiful center yesterday so that um, you could all have something with an audio and video that was better than this. But I'm also so happy to be able to connect with you live. Ben, it's such a joy to be with you and being together with Rabbi Rosen, with Audrey is just such a blessing in any way, at any time. And I'm so grateful that you've brought us all together and that you've brought us all together with our global world family.
Thank you, Sadhvi. Well, thank you. What a special moment that you're able to jump in here, and we have most of our fellow panelists up on the screen here. Many of which you know, of course, Audrey and Dr. A.K. Merchant, but also Auntie Patricia and Davis and Partick Carolan,
Wonderful.
David Rosen. Let's hope he's fast asleep. It's 3 in the morning in Jerusalem. But thank
It's
you for
also Shabbat.
Shabbat as well. So thank you, Sadhvi. Blessings on your journeys, and deep gratitude for the light and the love you spread across the world, between the continents and between the heart. And a beautiful message there, and very resonant, deeply resonant with the message that Audrey had just shared, and David before him. So thank you for joining us. We're going to hear the wisdom now of Patricia and Davis, which is extraordinary. So thank you for blessing us with your presence, Sadhvi, and safe travels. I know you've got
Thank
to
you, Ben, for
jump on
the
the plane.
beautiful opportunity.
Blessings. Blessings. Well, let me introduce you, Patricia, and then we'll spotlight you alone, but we'll keep the fellow panelists up there during the introduction because it's lovely to see everybody on the screen together. And Patricia, Auntie Patricia Ann Davis, is just an extraordinary wisdom keeper and holder, and someone who has been an enormous part of this community over many years now through the deep collaboration with John Raymer, with One World, with the Compassion Games, with World Unity Week, with so many, all of the beautiful offerings. There are programs in One World that are offering deep access into Patricia Ann Davis's extraordinary pedagogical educational programs. So let me do a brief introduction. We're so happy to have you with us. Patricia Ann Davis is an Indigenous elder of the Choctaw and Diné lineage, and apologies if I haven't got that pronunciation. Choctaw and Diné. I'm still studying how to say that properly. Diné is known in the English tongue as Navajo. Patricia is a whole systems designer specializing in peacemaking leadership, who has worked as an administrator in health and human services for 20 years. She is an international educator and organizational consultant who has initiated, trained, and experienced in facilitating her authentic Indigenous ceremonial change process that Patricia designed for wellness restoration with the unifying principles inclusive of all ethnic nationalities, cross-cultural, intergenerational, restores resources to the next generation of youth, universal and practical life application, and can be translated into any language. And Patricia, you are a master of translating concepts that would be beyond most of us from outside the Diné cultural heritage and particularly helping us to understand at a deeper level the meaning and the beauty and the truth that is Hojo. And you have dedicated your life to sharing this message as wisdom of your lineage, of your culture. So welcome. It's amazing to have you with us, and we're looking forward to hearing your sharing, Patricia and Davis.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you, beautiful cohorts, for this invitation. I'm using the Indigenous ceremonial change process that I designed to name an out-of-balance condition, identify the root cause that maintains that out-of-balance condition, reframe out of destructive and death-producing consequences and into constructive and life-affirming co-creative solutions for collective beneficial application for uniting and manifesting love and peace. Greetings, everyone. My spiritual family and relatives, I extend a warm heart-to-heart hug from my ceremonial fireplace to the hearth of your homes, the symbol of spiritual family love. My maternal and paternal bloodline introduction here is that I was born of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw, Int'l, and born into the Tachitni, which is, I'm born in the image and footsteps of my father into the Tachitni Bashalchin, authentic medicine clan people. Chata, Dene, Ada Shache, Kia Ani Ada Shanala, Ado the Yen the Ne'abiaja Int'l. This is an affirmation that we are all a precious child of Creator within creation, synchronistically in our holistic body constitution of the earth, water, fire, and air, all the while simultaneously and synergistically existing with the environmental earth, water, fire, and air. Thus, we're all held together within an intelligent coherence, Ina, or in Sanskrit, Akash, the etheric network and the web of light and life. Today, I join with you, my beloved brothers and sisters, to affirm and advocate for the co-creative, elegant solution that teaches us love as a spiritual unifying principle of the interfaith community, the interspiritual community, and all compassionate humanitarians. We are bowed and we have vowed to the Creator Almighty that we will serve in the world as way showers of why and how we must make decisions for the greatest good, for the greatest number of people. And it is our task, each and every one of us, to restore the spirit of the will to love and the will to good by giving voice from the many-faceted diamond crystal soul, our light body, a spark of divinity, light within a greater light. Indigenous spirituality within the holy people, the yin, the ne, hojo, natural order law, is the fundamental basis of equality of all people. Shilpa hojo, shilpa hojoni, adon hojo nasha, hojo nasha doles. I am holistically walking in beauty with love and peace dwelling within me and radiating all around me. We walk, we speak, we heal, we sing accordingly. Hojoja Biyin is Blessed Way songs, Yeipiche songs for spiritual renewal. Ho One Biyins are songs for building a home. Biche is singing in ceremonies and singing someone back to health and wellness. Nada being songs for grinding corn. Flint being songs for riding a horse. Ado and also Zith being, which is mountain songs for spiritual strength to travel in life. However, note that today we are still called, quote, bloodthirsty savages in the US Constitution, and the Black people are still considered three-fifth human, and that's black ink on white paper. Georgia is the spiritual self-identity realization ceremony to remember within the primary family and in the extended clan family, and now here in the humane family of nations, that living the loving way is a way of life. And that affirmation is Georgia ongoing blessing. We know that the denial of oneness within Hojo is task avoidance. That task avoidance of loving and serving the Creator the way the Creator loves and serves all of us equally. Yet, the absolute abrogation of responsibility, the deception, the deviousness, and the arrogant defiance and blatantly vowing to use brute force, revenge to perpetuate gender, race, and political domination and submission is abhorrent. That's the only word I could find that expresses the unthinkable, the unimaginable, the unexplainable, the incomprehensible. And the so-called civilized and democratic people are promising to use more, quote, lethal military weaponry to continue warfare and the empire, what I coined as the empire folly. Destructive and death-producing intentions and decisions have been perpetually set into motion, and the momentum is escalating. All the while, America repeats the historical colonial mantra to support global perpetrators and predators, the right to defend itself from the very violence and suffering that it originally instigated in the invader genocide and plunder. That is justified by the barbaric belief that the only way to survive through the generations is to gang up on the other and steal from them for their own benefit. We say to that, Ya Allah, why is such a thing going on? Why is that happening? Well, we know from the U.S. promises of indigenous treaty rights here on Turtle Island that we will never manifest peace in the world by talking out of both sides of our mouth, and that forked tongue English, demanding a ceasefire while continually funding warmongering chaos, alongside with promises of humanitarian aid during the political annihilation process. We will send you humanitarian aid while we are in the process of annihilating you. We are not co-conspirators who unite in making promises that are just empty lies. We're co-creators uniting for a peaceful world. We know that responsibility is to use our inherent ability to respond in more healthy ways and not to project blame that justifies genocide, mass murder, and plunder, mass theft, and that do not devaluate and dehumanize others in enemy creation, projected out from the war within, projected outward, to set the victim up to fail in order to blame the victim and to collect from the victim by stealing their lands and natural resources. Why do we cherish and glory in perpetrator, victim, conqueror mentality? Why do we value and perpetuate destructive and death-producing decisions with multi-generational consequences of violence and suffering? That's my values clarification. Christians, I see this Earthstock Summit as an intentional meeting to present co-creative solutions with Creator, with our sacred self, and with the sacred self of others. We cannot say we are, quote, we are fighting for peace. We are fighting for freedom. We must be peace. Speaking about the purpose of this Earthstock Summit as an intentional meeting to present co-creative solutions with Creator, within our sacred self, and with others. We know that we're considered a conquered people with no voice, and wherever that is coming from, I'm sharing with you that we cannot say that we're fighting for peace, that we're fighting for freedom. We must be peace, to speak and to live peace. And that originates from that sacred place within our authentic spiritual sanctuary within our heart, where the love principle is eternal within the universe. My leverage point is, my personal leverage point is, I will not stand with my hand over my sacred heart and sing the bombs bursting in air and the flag was still there. Ya Allah Bahadzetoholo. Although normalized toxic deviance, defiance is perpetrated ad hojogo nahazli, which is saying in our eternal self, each and every one of us in our eternal now, we eternally exist within the holiness and wholeness of Hojo, this oneness of perfect love and peace of Creator within creation. I am a peacemaker. I am an advocate for what is good, beautiful, and true for all of us. Hojo nahas, clean, Hojo nahas, clean, Hojo nahas, clean, Hojo nahas, clean. Thank you, my spiritual family, and all of my relatives. Thank you, brothers and sisters. I love you.
Well, thank you, Auntie Patricia and Davis. Deep, deep, deep gratitude to you. And we're just so grateful for the wisdom and for the truth telling and the light that you are sharing. You're representing such a deep, deep lineage and connection to a profound truth source and wisdom source that is so important. And as we reflect at a global level of the importance and the extreme gifts of indigenous wisdom right around the planet in every continent, that holds that deep, deep connection to Mother Earth and to all of life. It's something that is a unique contribution from the wisdom traditions of indigenous truth telling and knowledge systems. And thank you for your ability to be able to translate it into English, which is a transactional language. And it's not easy to translate these beautiful vibrational terms, of the words which reflect the essences of what they are connecting to, whether it be the tree or the ocean or the mountain or the community, and taking them and translating them into English is no easy task, but it's something you've committed yourself to with great persistence and determination. And we are the recipients of that, so that we can get a glimpse into what Hojo is, beyond meaning and beyond thought, into the experience of it as reality itself.
It is a diagnostic language, so it's describing and defining. There's no straight across translation because they're in two different thinking systems.
Yes. So no easy task to try and help us build bridges for us to have a deeper understanding. And that is so important when we're talking about spiritual unity, being able to understand through the thousands of languages that are on this planet, ultimately what is valued and what is meant by different cultures and different perspectives. It's such important work to be bridge builders across those divides. While we have this convening in the English language, we're not going to get to a deeper planetary unity until we're able to find ways. And I know you've been working with AI, with John Raymer and the team there, and finding ways to bring indigenous wisdom and using these most modern of tools. And for that, we're richly grateful to you, Patricia. Thank you for the wisdom and the truth telling that you bring. I want to bring up our next speaker, which coming to us from Delhi is Dr. A.K. Merchant. Dr. A.K. Merchant is a dear friend of Unity Earth, and we've had many journeys together, including into one of the most beautiful experiences I had when Dr. Merchant took us to the Lotus Temple in Delhi. It's extraordinary architecture of the Baha'i temple there, and such a beautiful tradition which is so committed to unity, and in particular to spiritual unity. Dr. A.K. Merchant is a member of the Baha'i community since 1975. He's the General Secretary of the Temple of Understanding India Foundation until 1923. He served on the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'i of India and the Lotus Temple, holding executive positions. Currently, he serves as the Secretary of Baha'i Spiritual Assembly of Delhi and several other not-for-profit organizations. Dr. Merchant is a prolific author and writer and thought leader at a global level, and we're honored to have you with us on today's presentation, all about spiritual unity in a divided world, a subject, Dr. Merchant, we know is very close to your heart. So welcome, and looking forward to your sharing today.
Yes. Well, good evening and good day to all of you. It's early morning, wonderful day has begun, and so much of wisdom has flowed. So I'm truly indebted and grateful being part of this Earthstock Summit 2024, which is being hosted by Unity Earth, its Executive Director, Ben Bowler. I'm also grateful to Miss Irina Morrison. And I also recall earlier when we had Yanni Maniatis coordinating some of our programs. And so much of wisdom has already flowed in this past 1 hour or so, after having heard Rabbi David Rosen, Madam Audrey Kitagawa, Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, Wisdom Keeper Patricia Ann Davis, and look forward to also the presentation by Brother Partick Carolan. So as member of the Baha'i community and also part of the interfaith fraternity, I'm strongly committed to promoting spiritual unity in today's divided world. As Baha'is, we believe that our age, our world, has actually entered a dark heart of an age of fundamental change. And this change is really going to be extremely profound. It's going to be an organic change in the very structure of the way humanity has organized life. Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i faith, affirmed 3 fundamental unities at different levels. First, he proclaimed the absolute unity of the divine reality. The unity of divine reality, however, is beyond the capacity of human understanding, even in terms of a conceptual framework. The categories of oneness and plurality are incapable of expressing the unknowable divine unity. But this divine reality is the foundation and the ultimate purpose of all beings. Baha'is believe that human beings are capable of reflecting divine reality through their quest and longing to attain the presence of that unknowable essence of essences called God, who is invoked in many diverse ways and forms, as we have heard from the earlier speakers. The religions or dharmas brought to humankind by a succession of spiritual luminaries have been the primary link between humanity and that ultimate reality. Had humanity seen these educators of its collective childhood in their true character as agents of one civilizing process, it would no doubt have reaped incalculably greater benefits from the cumulative effects of their successive messages and understood the manifold aspects of love and unity. So living a life of coherence, a life in the spirit of unity and diversity, developing our capabilities to serve humanity. These are important criteria in the life of every Baha'i. The second level of unity that Baha'u'llah spoke of was in the realm of the manifestations of the ultimate reality. And according to the Baha'is, in the documented history and belief systems of the vast majority of the human race, we believe in these divine educators like Krishna, Buddha, Mahavir, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, peace be upon him, Nanak, and for our age, the Bab and Baha'u'llah. They spoke to human race at different historical times, restating the spiritual truths and giving us social and administrative messages that were pertinent and relevant to the times. On the basis of our understanding of the two levels of unity, Baha'u'llah proclaimed the unity of humankind, a metaphysical and essential truth and reality. We have talked about identities. For Baha'is, peoples of whatever race, nation, religion, caste, or creed, all are being challenged to subordinate all lesser loyalties and limiting identities to their oneness as citizens of a single planetary homeland. And in the words of Baha'u'llah, the unity of humankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established. It's very sad to see that in today's sorely polarized and divided world, we have to struggle to understand some of these very basic truths, which have been also articulated by my earlier esteemed speakers in their own inimitable style. I believe that building capacities, our capabilities, children, youth, men and women, everyone on this planet Earth is very important. And to this end, under the guidance of the Universal House of Justice, the Supreme Governing Council of the Baha'is, throughout the globe, a massive program of capacity development is ongoing for the past 40 years. And this process, as it accelerates, will bring about a new awakening. Because human beings have a destiny, a glorious one, the Baha'is believe. And whatever challenges, whatever crises that we have to face, it can be overcome. We have that God-given intelligence. We have a rational soul. And if we only awaken in that direction of unity and harmony, and building a peaceful world on the basis of new structures, new laws, new institutions, can the world find that this planet is our common homeland. The earth, Baha'u'llah said, is but one country, and humankind its citizens. Women and men, in the eyes of God, have always been one, same, like the wings of the bird. But unfortunately, today, the kinds of violence, the destruction, the wars, the conflicts, these are all immature manifestations of basic human instincts. Baha'is firmly believe that the changes that are occurring can also be looked upon as a period of pregnancy when a new being is about to be born. The birth pangs are actually leading us to realization that we cannot continue the way we are. We have to transform. We have to be forward-looking, and we have to see this world in a new light, where all men and brothers, all men and women are brothers and sisters, where all nations are members of one federated commonwealth, where a world authority would ensure that war is forever outlawed, where the resources of the planet, the finite resources of the planet, which are the birthright of all human beings, are judiciously utilized for the peace and prosperity of all. So anyone with some common sense, looking at the world, looking at the society around, can easily understand that a lot of wrong things are happening and we have to change. Many examples are given. So it is in the spiritual awakening that we are members of one world family that a new realization will dawn, and people will bring about those dramatic changes, create institutions, formulate laws, which are all in the interest of every man, woman, youth, and child. So there is a height of human experience where the instinct for combat sinks back into the inner spirit and finds rest. That height is the achievement of the spiritual unity that we all long for which this Earthstock summit is also taking place. And although our numbers may be small, but the message will go far and wide. So the achievement of the spiritual unity in today's solely polarized and divided world is the challenge before all. Then shall the world of existence, the Baha'is believe, have attained maturity and usher in the coming of age of the entire human race. This is my humble message, and I'd like to close with a prayer which we daily offer at our Baha'i Lotus Temple, which Ben has mentioned, and so many millions come every year. And what they find is the three triple unities: the unity of the divine reality, the unity of all the religions, because they have all come from the same source, with two basic types of messages: the spiritual truths, which are restated in different languages and different ways, and also exemplified by its founders and the followers, and the social or administrative truths, which are given according to the exigencies and the needs of the times. So we must realize that there is a progressive evolutionary trajectory in our spiritual development. And I believe that it is happening. And as our capacities are developed, and Baha'is have this elaborate program through this institute process, where children, youth, adults, men and women, groups of families, and every one of the 22,000 clusters that have been geographically identified have this program. And this process is accelerating, gaining momentum. And it is to this end that we are open to every human being, every organization, every institution. We collaborate. And our 6 lines of action, which are called the core activities, starting with the devotionals, children's classes, junior youth empowerment programs, study circles, social action, and participation in public discourses. All of these converge to helping everybody to understand the spiritual unity of humankind at a time when the world is so afflicted, so deep in suffering. Every time we hear some news, our hearts are pained. The heart-wrenching episodes of violence, destruction. So let's just like to conclude, which is a 25 seconds prayer. God, grant that the light of unity, God, grant that the light of unity may envelop the whole earth, and that the seal, the kingdom is God's, may be stamped upon the brow of all its peoples. Once again, Ben, Irina, and Unity Earth, thank you very much for making me part of this Earthstock Summit 2024. And I will always cherish my association with Unity Earth. And I do keep track of reading so many voluminous messages and only respond occasionally. Thanks again. I'm once again grateful to all of you and my earlier distinguished speakers who are in their own right very well-known spiritual guides with whom I have been associated for a long time. So with tremendous gratitude. I look forward to your questions and remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Merchant. Thank you for bringing that beautiful, profound spiritual wisdom inspired by the Baha'i tradition. Much appreciated and deeply beautifully received. Thank you so much. Our last speaker before we get into what will be a relatively brief dialogue and Q&A is Partick Carolan. And Patrick, again, is a dear friend that's been with us on the journey with Unity Earth now for many years. And it's great to have you with us. Partick Carolan is a Catholic activist, writer, and storyteller. He served as the executive director of the Franciscan Action Network, co-founded the Global Catholic Climate Movement, the Faithful Democracy Coalition, and the Catholics Vote Common Good organization. He is currently the co-national director of Catholics Vote Common Good. His writing and activism are centered on his understanding and belief through Franciscan spirituality of the connectedness of all creation and God. In addition to his activism in writing, Patrick is currently working on the documentary film, The Resurrection of the Witch, Women's Quest for Divinity. Fascinating. So Patrick, welcome. Great to have you with us and looking forward to hearing you sharing.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank everyone. I'm blessed and honored to be here with all of you. It's a joy, and listening to everyone speak first sort of makes me a little bit nervous now. The late 20th century Catholic priest and one of the founders of the modern-day eco-spirituality movement, Thomas Berry, wrote in A Dream of Earth, "The deepest crisis experienced by any society are those moments of change when a story becomes inadequate for meeting the survival demands of a present situation. Today, our world is in crisis. It appears that we've reached that point where our story of life is more about a struggle surrounded by anxiety and despair rather than hope or joy. Our story is collapsing, and there seems to be no way out of the mess that we have made. The 20th century Jesuit priest Teilhard de Chardin once said, "We either evolve or we'll be destroyed." Teilhard was not talking about a physical evolution. He was talking about a spiritual evolution. The 13th century Franciscan theologian St. Bonaventure described the created universe as a fountain fullness of God's expressed being. As God is expressed in creation, creation in turn expresses the creator. I often wonder, what kind of a creator are we expressing when we allow millions upon millions of children to die from hunger each year? One of the founders of the Franciscan Order, St. Clare, said, and I'm paraphrasing this now, when you look at another person, you should see Christ. And when another person looks at you, they should see Christ. If we are not seeing Christ in everything and everybody, then we really need to stop for a minute and we need to reimagine, rethink our spirituality. Thomas Berry said we go forth with a singular spirituality or we will perish in a desert. Berry was not talking about our religion. He wasn't talking about whether we worship on Friday night or Saturday or Sunday or how we hold our hands or what prayers we pray. He was talking about how we see ourselves in relation to all creation, the oneness in all of us. The Franciscan scholar, Sister Elia Delio, in her article, The Death of God and the Rebirth of God, writes about what she describes as the new old story that Jesus taught us. She writes, Jesus' integral consciousness of wholeness evoked a genuine revolution in cosmic and social relations, a new creativity, a new structure of existence based on community and shared values. She saw all creation as part of himself and called his disciples to a new future, to create a transformed earth where all could live together in justice, mercy, and peace. In his encyclical Laudato Si', Pope Francis called us to move forward in a bold cultural revolution. He calls us to rise up, not in a revolution of guns, but a revolution of spirit, to stop living in a world where we are all separate and we come together in a world of interbeing, a world where we are part of God's creation, not separate from creation. If we're going to create this world, we need to start by dreaming of a new earth, where our story is not of separation, but of oneness. And to do this, we really need to reimagine our sacred stories. Our sacred stories are beautiful and rich, filled with wisdom and understanding. But when they were written, we had a whole different understanding of the cosmos. So we need to reimagine those stories and tell them a little differently, maybe. And just as an example, in my tradition, in the Christian tradition, one of the most preached stories is the story of the loaves and the fishes. You probably have all heard this at one time or another. It's in every one of the Gospels. The story goes that Jesus came to preach one day, and 4,000 or maybe 5,000, depending on which version you read, were there. The disciples got worried because the crowd was large and everybody was getting hungry. So they told Jesus that he should just send the people home. And Jesus said no. Then one of the disciples came forward with a basket he got from a boy that had 5 loaves and 2 fishes. As the story goes, Jesus blessed the basket and the baskets were multiplied and they were able to feed everyone and even had food left over. Now, this is preached a lot and it's often called one of the best miracles of Jesus. But they leave parts of the story out when they preach it. Our priests and our preachers, they leave some important parts out. And one of the most important part that they leave out, it says that there were men there, but it says in addition to men, there were women and children. I have 4 children. We didn't go anywhere when my children were young without first packing a bag of snacks. We didn't go to church on Sunday. We didn't go to grandma's house. We didn't go anywhere without snacks. So I'm guessing that if women and children were there among that crowd, women would have most likely packed a picnic basket with food, before leaving their houses. The story goes on to say that Jesus then told his disciples to divide the people into small groups of 50. So maybe the miracle was not Jesus blessing the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, but rather the miracle was getting all those people to share their food with each other. And as a result, no one went hungry and there was plenty of food left over. It takes on a whole different meaning. Rather than God doing for us, the miracle is God getting us to do for each other. That's a whole different imagination of that sacred scripture that's preached all over and over again. I actually have never heard it preached the way I just said it. I would love to have a priest get up someday and preach it that way. My friend and author, Brian McLaren, so brilliantly wrote in his new book, Life After Doom. He wrote, in my dream, our life-giving connection to each other and to the living earth would be fundamental, central, and sacred. And everything else, from economies to governments to schools to religions, would be renegotiated to flow from that fundamental connection. In my dream, we would know God, not as separate from creation, but as the living light and the holy energy we encounter in and through creation, embodied, incarnated in the current and flow of past, present, and future, known most intimately in the energy of love. So, brothers and sisters, this is where we need to be if we really seek a greater unity of the human family and we seek planetary harmony and kinship with all of life. Thank you, and peace and all good.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, Patrick. Thank you so much. It's so heartening to hear the interpretations from the different traditions, couched in the positivity of spiritual unity rather than enmity, as we heard before, Patricia and Davis referring to enemy creation. That is, we're so prevalent in many different contexts today. So let's bring up our different speakers that are here with us. Thank you so much, everyone, for your beautiful comments and your beautiful teachings and messages. We do have a special guest, which is Dr. Kurt Johnson, who's here as well. And this is part of Kurt's life's work, obviously with thoughts to Sadhvi and David Rosen, who shared as well, who can't be with us in this moment. But we honor their contribution to this, such an important discussion. And, when we look around, just in very brief, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, there have been tremendous forces really ripping people apart, communities, families, politics, going back to COVID and the whole issues around all of that. You see at so many different levels, there's challenges of unity have been really fierce and accelerated over the last several years. So it's so important to have these sorts of discussions and convenings. And I know that everybody, Kurt, went back to their origin of their wisdom tradition, back to the sacred dimension, connection to God, to the indwelling spirit, and really that is the foundation for our unity going forward. It's really been clear from all these amazing messages that have been shared today. So I'd love to hear your reflections, Dr. Kurt Johnson, as such an influential book, The Coming into Spiritual Age, published now 20 years ago, and getting ready for the next series of books that will be continuing this conversation forward. We'd love to hear your reflection on our wonderful speakers today. Dr. Kurt Johnson.
Right. Thanks so much. So what a nice surprise to be able to be here. And it is the 25th anniversary of Wayne Teasdale's book, The Mystic Heart, that named interspirituality. He was one of 5 famous people that had a name for it. I'll say more about that in a minute. And the 10th anniversary of my book, The Coming into Spiritual Age. So actually, Light on Light, which, as you know, is a publisher that we put together 3 years ago. We've won 8 Nautilus Awards and Best in Small Press. We're going to be doing a 2-volume definitive history of the transition from interfaith to interspirituality on the occasion of this 25th anniversary of Wayne's book. And there are 140 contributors. Those of you that I'll still need to reach out to, I want to do that. Matthew Fox has written the foreword. Ken Wilber has written the afterword. Matthew Fox, the foreword, because he's one of the 5. He's the only one of the 5 who gave a name to interspirituality that is still with us. And so I think just with that as a background, what we can do, and it'll only take a minute or two, is just give a little update on the State of the Union, like what has happened in that 25 years. And it actually can be summarized really about a minute or two. What hasn't happened and what has happened? Well, what hasn't happened is that interspirituality so far did not become the great global intersubjective discussion among all the isms. And I'll tell you about that, why that is in just in a minute. And it also didn't become a grand melding that everyone was going to run to right away. At least that has not happened so far. Actually, what Wayne didn't anticipate is actually the answer to why that happened. He didn't anticipate the return to nationalist populism all around the world, which has turned people back to being so attracted to division instead of unity. So he didn't anticipate that. And he didn't anticipate disaffiliation, that so many people would be leaving the organized religions that nearly 60 to 70% of people, particularly young people, are more spiritual but not religious than involved in this or that tradition. So he didn't anticipate that, and that's one of the reasons the great melding of the isms has not happened so far. But what did happen? So what did happen, and this is exactly what Ben said at the beginning, if you go into a room now compared to 10 years ago and you ask, how many people in this room look to more than one tradition for your wisdom or for your practices? Today, 80% of the hands would go up in the room. 10 years ago, maybe only 5%, very, very small numbers. So that has happened. And the other thing that has happened is that the religions today are still in their silos, but because of globalization, we are right on top of each other. We're no longer in a world where the silos have big, large boundaries between them. We are on top of each other. So the message is that the interspiritual age is here already, though it's here in a little bit of a different way than how Wayne and others anticipated it. So the work that's ahead of us, very, very clearly outlined by everyone who spoke here, and it really summarized that the work ahead is the journey from the head to the heart. All of the religions, everyone in the world who's doing awakening spirituality, whatever we call it, to move from that level of the ideas and to how we're all one in the heart. That was that was the theme of all of you. So that's it. So I would say the State of the Union is promising, but it's going to take all of us continuing to message the very messages that we have messaged tonight. And that's what this book that we're doing will be all about. And I think it'll be a benchmark in the history of interfaith to interspirituality, telling what's happened, and then so many, many new voices about what they vision can still happen. So short and sweet.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kurt. Great to feel the history that's brought us to this moment, and also to look into where it may be going. And just with closing comments from each of our speakers, as we just deep gratitude to each of you for being, this has been such a significant and robust sharing and dialogue. Audrey Kitagawa, the work you do with the International Academy for Multicultural Cooperation is profoundly important. And we're so grateful to be partnering with you in this work together. We'd love to hear your closing reflections, having heard all the different sharing today, as we start to close our program today. Miss Audrey.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. You know, I think it's very appropriate that I share a stanza from the wonderful work of Amanda Gorman, who wrote The Hill That We Climb. And in this poem, which she read at President Biden's inauguration, the appropriate stanza that I would like to share is, "We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burden. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright." So we're always thinking forward, the future generation, and we are always hopeful and aspirational and forward-looking, as we should be, because we have the capacity within ourselves, as was shared previously by one of the speakers, and that divine intelligence to create the solutions to all the challenges that we face today. But we must always remember that the ultimate realization of the divine in our daily lives comes from practicing loving thoughts, loving speech, and loving actions, which is something that we all can take responsibility for doing every day that we live. So thank you so much, Ben.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you deeply, Audrey Kitagawa, for all that you have shared. And Patricia and Davis, as we begin to close this important dialogue and conversation that will continue forever. we'd love to hear your closing remarks.
I've learned from each and every one of you, and every time I learn and I listen carefully, and I'm grateful to have those insights that bring us to this sacred place within the sanctuary of our heart, from where we are connected, interconnected, interrelated with the very source of all peace and love. And we're describing that in the in-breath and out-breath, that we're moving around and making a sound. We're animated by this inherent divinity, a spark of a divinity, inherent sovereignty that we're all governed by. And while I'm coming from a generational oral tradition, I look forward to putting together this indigenous knowledge of what I have learned in my life and speak from my father and authentic clan medicine people. I think the title will be Welcome Home, Shiyaja. That means welcome home, my precious child, for all of us, because I have often said to many audiences and live audiences that the symbols and the narrative that go with them don't separate us. For example, I said the manger, the chalice, the Holy Grail, the Holy Land, the mandala in Sanskrit are all the same sacred self. The self-realization of our sacred self, our true spiritual identity from which we think and speak and act accordingly. And I call that common holy sense.
Common holy sense.
Or sacred holy.
Well, Patricia, let's give a thumbs up. Let's all give a thumbs up to common holy sense and that work going forward. Thank you so much. That is beautiful. Dr. Merchant, so your final reflections.
Yeah, it was wonderful listening to all of you. And as you can see that the accumulated wisdom, the knowledge that we have can surely take us to the next stage. And Baha'is believe and quote Baha'u'llah often, this handful of dust, the earth, is one home. Let it be in unity. Ye are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. These are my final reflections, and my support to Unity Earth will always be there, and I'll do my humble bit to ensure that this process of awakening, coupled with service to all of humankind without any distinction or discrimination, is sustained. And we have wonderful wisdom. Sustainable Development Goals is one of the areas of my service, as well as the UNESCO's Education Curriculum Framework for the 21st century. Let us look at these documents and get the best benefit.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much.
Magnificent. Thank you so much. And Patrick Carolan, thank you for being with us. Your wonderful, rich sharing there from the Catholic tradition and wisdom. Would love to hear your final comments.
I just so grateful to have been asked to be here. I often tell people I bumped into Ben many, many years ago at a Parliament of World Religion gathering, and it was one of the best people I've ever bumped into. And I'm so grateful that whatever spirit guided me to bump in and stop and say hello to Ben, that we did that. It's been such a joy. I became a grandfather last year, and so now everything I do is for my grandson, and it just gives me that much more hope going forward. I was recently, last week, I was at the Democratic National Convention, and it was filled with 50,000 people who were hopeful, young people who were just full of hope and joy about going forward. So we have to go forward with hope and with joy. Thank you all so much for being part of it.
Amen. Amen. Yes, Patrick, that was a wonderful encounter that's continuing to be fruitful. And thank you so much, everybody. This has been such an important dialogue and conversation, and we're so richly blessed by the wisdom, by the variety of the traditions. Let me just say a quick closing myself. There's a short-term gain for a limited number of people when we play the us versus them program on this planet. And it's easy to fall into. It's kind of like sugar or something. We fall into it, and there's a short-term gain for a small number of people. The work of bringing together all the different cultures and all the different traditions and all the lineages and the rich infinite diversity of humanity isn't an easy one. It's not the easy way. It takes persistence and devotion. Look at Patricia's been going for more than half a century, and the work of Audrey and Kurt for decades and decades, and Dr. Merchant and Patrick. And this is not necessarily the easy road, but it is a road that is supported by what is real, what is true, what is beautiful, and what is good is with us. So this road towards a greater unity, a greater harmony, equality, understanding, respect, listening, humility, this is the right way. So as we come across those challenges and we see people taking the lesser way of us versus them and demonizing others and enemy creation, as Patricia has called it, let us just hold this greater whole and know that the true, the beautiful, and the good is with us in this journey. Deep respect, much love, gratitude to all of you. And on we go from here, for victory is assured. Thank you, my friends. God bless.
Thank you.